Here goes. Todd Merrill is an experienced software executive who typically assists clients as a fractional or interim CTO and CISO as a partner at TechCXO. He has served in a series of companies as a C-level executive focused on leveraging the cloud to bring SaaS offerings to market. As an entrepreneur, turned around expert, technology and product leader, and mentor, Todd has led full corporate P&L and product development responsibilities and directed diverse international teams of engineering managers, mobile architects, developers, DevOps, QA, and customer success professionals. And with that, please join me in welcoming Todd. And Todd, you already have access to the slides, I guess.
Yeah.
Here goes, all yours.
So my name
Yeah,
is
the
Todd
slide
Merrill.
popped up, and I was like, "Where did Todd go? Wait a second."
We had the Zoom generation for sure. Everybody's better at it than they were. So my name's Todd Merrill. My background is a software engineer, and I love writing software. And I've started a couple different companies along the way and taken venture money and been involved with very late stage companies that were very successful, done IPOs, seen the whole range of the growth curve from napkin, literally, all the way up through IPO exit. And in my current role, I'm serving as a fractional CTO or an interim CTO as a partner at TechCXO. And we see a lot of different companies, particularly at the front end of the growth curve. And me and my partners, some of us are tech, a lot of them are not tech, but they're in the tech industry. We compare a lot of notes, and we've come up with a lot of interesting thoughts on how people grow, what causes them to grow, what are the pain points. I love sharing a little bit of wisdom, and then this is one of the things that I seem to talk to a lot of my clients about as they're going up the growth curve and having trouble, which is often why they call us. Help get us unstuck or help us figure out what's wrong here. I have a just thought I'd mention for a second. I have a podcast called Tales from the Sky Lounge on just about any platform you can think of, and we're on LinkedIn too. You can reach out to me there, just Todd Merrill on LinkedIn. But love to share more in depth with you. But today, um, just some thoughts on leadership, evolution, and scaling companies. So there was this book that was written for the dot-com generation, which is when I came up, when I was starting some of my most early companies. So they went back and they studied, a bunch of MBAs studied what made the very early big tech companies go, and what were the lessons learned. Oracle, Microsoft, Apple, Sun, Cisco, all those very early companies. And then there's a couple of interesting things that happened. Growth is not linear a lot of times. We all talk about the hockey stick curve, but I think it's more of a culturally, it can be a little bit more like three gears shifting kind of a curve. And we'll talk about what those different gears are, and then what some of the pitfalls are, and then how should we, as leaders in these growth companies, think about things. So, uh, growth curve and its challenges. So the book, this is from Accidental Empires, is likens a growth stage company to an army going to war. And then so first thing you do is you go through three phases, right? First thing you do is you send in the commandos, very highly trained, elite, high skill set of folks working on some very focused goal. And that's like a startup getting their proof of concept MVP out the door, finding product market fit initially, raising a little bit of money. So then at some point you win, you accomplish a goal, and then you start taking down market share. You begin to win the shooting war, and it becomes an army of invasion. And the hallmarks of that are you need a little bit of coordination. There's more people. You can take on more serious goals, And then there's more thoughtful strategy and execution that comes into play. And then you see things like HR and legal contracts, a little bit more robust financial accounting, better systems in the software. And at some point, you win the war. You are Microsoft. Take the bullets out of the guns, deliver the pizza, keep the hospital open. Whatever you do, don't shoot anybody at all. So you're an army of occupation. Don't screw up. It becomes not about figuring out what the deal is in the market. It becomes more about maintaining market share and growing a little bit if you can, and just maintaining status quo, making that inertia go as far and wide as possible, and just managing risk. And then if you think about it, those are three very distinct mentalities. And not everybody is going to be happy in every one of those phases. And in fact, what we find out is usually the vast majority of people fall neatly into one of those categories. And the best managers are the ones that can span 1 to 2 or maybe 2 to 3. And almost nobody goes 1 to 2 to 3 and is happy about it unless something changes. So let's just kind of review, those different quantum phases of growth that I like to talk about, and then talk about some of the problems that this can cause and how to deal with it. So the commando phase, you're getting your MVP out. You just need a product in the market. You need to raise a little bit of money. You get skeleton team. You want really high quality, high skill people. Very focused on. There's no strategy. We're just going to kill that one thing, the MVP, get it out in the market. Iterate heavily, a lot of violence, a lot of chaos, a lot of hard execution required. A lot of things are messy, and it involves rapid, unstructured actions. So how many times have you gone out to market in that early company and you're shipping software directly from your founder's laptop? That's the kind of stuff that goes on in the commando phase. Very effective, can only go so far on the scalability, and but it can get you going. So then at some point you solve some problems, you solve for initial product market fit, you have a little bit of software out in the market, you've built a little bit of a team, you've opened bank accounts, you now know a couple lawyers, and you have some contracts. You're now an army of invasion all of a sudden. And you have meetings and people want to put in a little bit of process. You start to have, planning sessions, maybe quarterly roadmap meetings start to come in. You start to have competing priorities. Marketing wants some stuff in the product to make it go viral. AI, machine learning team, data science team needs a little bit more time to go get some more data to clean it, and what do we put our dev team on? What do we put our marketing team on? Which messages are we pushing out the door? It's all about coordination and process, and then organizing everybody. And then you're figuring out the market. You're taking ground. You're taking market share. You open up multiple markets, and you do have to coordinate, which is different from the chaos that was in the first phase. And at some point, you win. You're the UN peacekeeper, and you're delivering food and aid to people. You're a very large company. You've gone IPO. You've sold out to PE. There's a whole different another set of skills that has to come in. It becomes, you talk about risk management. You talk about not so much the chaos of trade-offs as just a well-groomed execution on strategy. Just maintaining, it's all about, single or double-digit percentage growth. It's not 3x or 4x anymore. You're just getting through the market, growing a little bit. Maybe you're doing M&A, and you're trying to just enjoy the fruits of your success and not mess up. Different skill set entirely. So what happens is companies grow, but people don't often. And so if you're not careful, the company can leave people behind when you're on this rapid growth curve. And they've actually measured what happens. So if you buy this concept that people neatly fall into one of those three buckets, Commando will start the company, and then they measured it about 20% of everybody in a year will get dissatisfied or uncomfortable with the place that the company has gotten to on that growth trajectory. So, commandos don't like to go to meetings. Commandos don't like to, you know, get bogged down in strategic retreats, that kind of thing. Strategic, middle manager, people who are laying down process and inventing compliance don't necessarily like to stick around and grow at a slow rate, as an example. So what you have to do is figure out when people are getting sick of, or they're mismatched personally with where the company is, and either help them find another job outside the company or remake their role into something else that more effectively uses their talents. So, me as an example, I figured out that as a leader, so I love being a commando phase coder when it's messy and I can just go like heck. But I don't last very long in the corporate growth phase as a coder. And then I usually shift gears when there's infrastructure to be built, policies and procedures to be laid down, teams to be built. I'm a more effective manager in that phase of operation, and I'm very quick to be able to hand off the coding to the next generation of folks that wants to do a little bit more thorough job at it. And then once it gets bigger and you're in the private equity space, I really don't want to be a manager. That just doesn't sound fun to me. But I'm happy to consult and help you with your risk policies and your compliance. Think about how you can better effectively manage people, in a coaching relationship, that kind of thing. So for me, that's an example of how me as an individual would fit on this growth curve, and how my job would necessarily have to change, or else I'm going to get dissatisfied or grumpy or irritable, because I really don't want to put up with certain constraints at different phases of the corporate development life. So usually what happens is you hit a wall at some point in the corporate growth. 20% of that staff is turning over every year. If you think about it, if you've been in business 4 years, 80% of your employees will be dissatisfied with the corporate growth curve, and you've locked them in with either founder equity or stock options or RSUs or some kind of long-term incentive plan. And then year five happens, and then all of a sudden everybody quits, and then everybody panics. And this is kind of a fun thing that they talk about in the book, where maybe that's okay. Or if you're a little bit more front about it, you can look for this to happen, and then look for people like me who are not going to want to code very much longer, and say, "Hey, Todd, can you please move into a different role?" And my favorite thing to do is move up into management. Not everybody's going to want to do that, so that might not be an option. But if you're aware of the situation, you can minimize the angst, and either find a new role for people, and a little bit more appropriate on the growth curve, or just say, hey, no harm done. We enjoyed our ride. Let's depart friends, and that's okay too. And then the other thing that happens is you got to watch founders. Founders are very important very early on, and they can become almost like royalty. But as time goes on, and the skills that made them tremendous early stage founders are not necessarily the skills that are needed or wanted or desired at later stages of the company. And if they stick around because they're vesting or something, or they're tied, emotionally to the company, it could be a problem. So you have to watch out for that too, the ego inflation, where the founders, are just kind of shoved over into a corner and they don't do much of anything. And that's not a great recipe for management over the years. So my advice is, acknowledge the discomfort, and when people grow, when the company grows and the people don't necessarily grow through that with you, and then just everything's a project, and make sure you surf those waves, and then make sure you're willing to adapt and change and figure it out as you go along. In conclusions, leadership skills are critical. You have to have very good people in the leadership positions. You want to hire for the phase you're about to go into, because those leaders will have the most longevity and they'll be able to identify the people most likely to succeed in the next phase of operation. Everyone is going to bring a unique skill set and a unique comfort zone to the table, and you have to look for that and acknowledge it and work with it, inside the bounds of what those people can put up and should put up with. And then acknowledge when people are uncomfortable and make changes. And sometimes it's creative, and then sometimes it's, your best job is somewhere else. Go start up another company and we'll go buy you. I've had that discussion more than once. But, one of my all-time favorite quotes is culture eats strategy for breakfast. And, on the podcast, it's amazing how often culture comes up as very important with these very senior leaders that I talk to. So make sure you instill a culture of change. It's positive and ongoing and healthy, and it'll carry you through to the end of the day. So that's my email, todd.merrill@techcxo.com. And I have a podcast, Tales from the Sky Lounge. Website is talesfromtheskylounge.com. So thanks for listening to me ramble a little bit on one of my favorite books, and would love to discuss any or all of that with you, as it makes sense.
I've got a couple of questions, but
Sure.
I'll, I'll let someone go ahead first. Thanos, you have a question? You want to go before we do?
Sure, I'll have a question. And by the way, a lot of this resonates, right? I've been to places where you have the scrappy startup, and it's like this guy was a VP at Google, and he's going to be VP of engineering here, and it's like, oh boy, like we don't need Kubernetes to run our like 3 server infrastructure. So it really resonates. Like, I'm curious if you've seen any good patterns. You kind of mentioned like, go start another startup for the founder, and we'll buy you later. But have you seen any other patterns to politely and nicely and
Mhm.
in a caring kind of way, get rid of founders that are no longer able to contribute in that environment,
Right.
and they need to, go find something productive to do, but it's not going to be here.
Right. So, it depends on personalities and appetites. And I get calls for this all the time, where you have a athletic founding engineer, great engineer, built a lot of really cool stuff, never been a VP, or, never wanted to deal with the people problems, right? And then so you just sit down with them and say, hey man, you're awesome. What do you want to do? Because I don't think you want to manage people. If you do, let's get you a coach, right? So plan A is coach them up and let everybody learn, because you've earned that right as a founder, is my first philosophy. Not everybody wants to do that. That's okay. And then if you want to be a senior technical resource, that's fine too. We'll find, we're gonna have to, you're gonna have to work for somebody else that's a people manager, and maybe that's okay. Um, or, hey, take your time, go start something else. You have our full support. Um, but
The
we gotta
pattern that
bring
I've
in a
seen
mix.
there, which is the reason I was poking with this question, is that usually you'll have like a business founder and a technical founder, right? And the business founder and the technical founder are kind of almost like an inseparable pair because they've built the trust and the relationship over the years. So
Mhm.
oftentimes the business person doesn't see that the technical person has reached their limitations here. So that makes
Right.
for like that awkward conversation, right? Of like, okay, maybe
Right.
that is not your guy to get you to the next level, and you need to figure this out. I know you love and trust this person, but this is really not the place for them anymore.
So the smell of that, and usually it's a forcing function of either an investor comes in, and usually there's a transaction involved, or somebody else comes in that's they'll hire like a marketing person or a HR person or a VP of sales. And they come in, and then where it breaks is at that intersection of product and market, which is like product ownership. Like if you hire when you hire your first product owner, and that's where you marry the business priorities with the development priorities. And that's usually a hard thing. You either get over it or you don't. A lot of people don't. Um, but somebody's got to call the shots on the priorities as you grow as a business, and then that product owner becomes a referee, more than a strategic product, driving force. And then that can cause trouble, right? And then everybody knows that there's trouble and friction when that situation happens. And by the way, it happens on the business side too. So I interviewed a guy, Bart Foster. He talks about his story, he's a sales guy for Ciba Vision contact lenses. Started a company, got it to about 50 million, and became he just wasn't growing with the company to the extent that the board wanted. And then he had a hard exit. But they're going to promote him to, you can't be CEO anymore, but you can be chairman of the board. And he didn't get the hint, or didn't really want to do that. He wanted to keep going. So sometimes it's not so graceful, but sometimes you can be empathetic and say, "Hey, this isn't working. We got to figure it out, or you got to go somewhere else." And then that happens a lot. But you don't have to be mean about it. And it's better if everybody's friends a little bit down the road, because you never know. And then, like what I like to do is go from coder to, manager of people and layer down of infrastructure. Not everybody wants to do that. Some people do, right? And then some people need to learn the skills, and you can hire a great coach to help. So it just depends on the people.
Emma, you want to go next?
No, I think Thanos covered my question. I was just wondering, have you, in your personal experience, have you ever had, can you think of a time where you had to convince a commando to sort of get used to more structure or change the style? And how did that conversation go over? Just something from your personal experience.
Right. So usually what ends up happening is you professional management starts coming in around, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 engineers. So and then this product ownership starts coming in. You have to be a little bit more disciplined with what you build. You can't just build anything. And when you get more than 10 customers is usually another milestone for me. You have to start building for an 80% solution that's going to cover most of everybody's needs. You have to start compromising, and the commandos don't like doing that. But it's needed. So usually physics dictates structure onto the organization, and then nature kind of takes its course. So I don't know if that's a good answer, but you don't usually, it just kind of happens more than somebody sits them down and says, "You know what, today's the day we get structure." I think it's more organic than that and it evolves, but it usually goes fairly quickly if you're a high growth company.
Okay. I'm gonna go up next. So I was gonna ask you, like, what are the signs for when the time is for a shift from the beyond the commando stage? But you've given one answer around 10 customers, but then there are exceptions. We do have jobs coming back to Apple, so there has to be something around how is growth a part of this? Can the company keep growing at a certain rate? I assume that if you're growing, I guess, beyond 20% per year or something, then you're still in commando mode. But then, there are companies that have. So let me take a step back. We have Elon Musk. We have Jobs coming back, which did him good, perhaps. Perhaps that can be debated. It did Apple good. And then there's a book which I haven't read, but have you heard of Who Says Elephants Can't Dance? And IBM.
Yeah.
So I'm having a hard time, like, defining, like, how does a company decide what phase
Right.
they're in, and can they continue to grow? Companies do like the Kitty Hawk approach too, right? So they can take commandos and sort of give them that project, as you mentioned, to Thanos. Like, it can be part of the company day one. So I'll pause there. Like, but in
Yeah.
your experience, as Simon said, like, what are the signs?
Yeah.
Other than customers?
Yeah, and that's the thing that happens in intrapreneurship. is mentioned in that book in particular, where or the skunk works model, or the
Mhm.
the secret lab, or so that's a thing that happens. That's very difficult to pull off. And usually you fragment, and distract resources. So yes, it can work. It's very rare that it does. And then when you're getting off the ground, usually it's around 50 employees. You're well done with the commando phase. And it's, when you have product market fit, usually I put down $1 million ARR. You're pretty much in 10 customers or more. You're done with that commando phase, or you should be pretty close to done. Doesn't mean you just don't. You probably saw a few of those early stage folks in your company, and maybe that's okay. But they're going to get progressively more aggravated as you lay down more structure, and they have to participate in more rigorous activities. And that's okay. Some companies can lengthen that, and maybe that's okay. But ultimately, they're going to get dissatisfied and just miss the good old days where I could just sling code and not have to worry about, doing a code review.
Todd, thank you very much.
Thanks.
This is wonderful.